Meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission for March 8, 2021. I want to welcome each and every one of you here. At this time, I'm going to ask that Craig Lynch lead our prayer and Pledge of Allegiance. Ask that everyone please stand.
You bow with me, please. Kind of Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the blessings you've given us this day, and we hope we've used them wisely, Heavenly Father. We thank you for our country. We pray for the leaders of our country. We pray that our country can stand tall and proud and be leader. Just as I pray for that continued strength that you give us for that.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. We have to begin each meeting with this announcement. This meeting of the Rutherford County Planning Commission is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting the meeting electronically is necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare in light of the coronavirus. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
Have the motion made. Do I have a second? We have a second. This vote will also be our roll call for the meeting. Would you please call the roll?
Charlotte P. Yes. Chip Pinion. Craig Lynch. Yes. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle.
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush. Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips. Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Quorum.
You have a quorum. At this time, we'll ask for the approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I have looked over the minutes that were presented, and they seem to be in fine order, and I move that they be accepted.
And we have a motion and a second. I ask that you call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch. Yes. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater. Jim Averwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle.
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips. Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. On item 5, there have not been any items withdrawn or deferred, so this means that we'll continue to move on and get right into our new business. Something you may be noticing tonight, that all of you sitting here, that you don't have your regular chairman sitting up here. And he has had a little bit of eye surgery, so I agreed to take that position. So bear with me and don't hold me totally responsible if I don't get everything exactly the way that Jeff Phillips would do it. So we'll move on right now into our new business, item 6, and we'll begin with 6A. And this is Jim Heintzen, number REZ 21003. Location of the property is on Franklin Road, a vacant tract, and 6577 Franklin Road. Commissioner's district is Trey Gooch. Size of the site is approximately 50 acres under consideration, tax map 100. Existing zoning is planned unit development, PUD, and residential medium density, RM. Proposed zoning, the PUD amendment, PUD for an age-restricted community. Mr. Dawson.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And a good afternoon, good evening, everyone who's here today, commission members and those in the audience. The original PUD request for this property was called Saddlewood, and it was approved by the Board of Commissioners back in April of 2019, so about 2 years ago. The plan included 133 residential units, 61 were going to be single-family detached, and 72 are going to be attached units in 4-unit structures. Preliminary plan approval was granted for the detached portion in April of 2020 by the Planning Commission, and the townhomes were approved by site plan at the Planning Commission's June 22nd, 2020 meeting. The Board of Commissioners, as a way of some background, recently approved an age-restricted community to the west of the subject properties, or the Burgess property, just late last year. The applicant for this application has since reevaluated the original PUD request that they had and is asked now to offer a complementary development. Adjacent property to the east, which is addressed as 6577 Franklin Road, has also been incorporated into the design of what you see. Now, the applicant plans to construct, and the comments that you have say age-restricted, but it's actually more of an age-targeted community. The applicant is going to have some comments on the differences to that. This development will contain 124 villas on the property, which, as you see, is a reduction of 9 total units. However, they will all be in 4-unit buildings, so there'll be 31 of those. Each residential villa will be sold as a zero lot line property. Each will have a 2-car attached garage. They are showing sidewalks on both sides of all streets, and streets will be private. Minimum size of the units, they did a little tweaking in their pattern book after these comments went out. It could be closer to about 1,500 square feet-ish, right around in that area. And the pattern book has included on your iPads for your information. We did have a neighborhood meeting. It was a virtual one back in January, as what's required by the zoning ordinance. The applicant did provide a synopsis of the meeting in the pattern book. Issues discussed range from traffic concerns, drainage, landscape buffering, and common areas. They are showing 2 access points proposed along Franklin Road. This is consistent with the last time they had this plan development approved. The main entrance will align with Royal Glen Boulevard. Again, that's consistent with what they were showing before. The second will be a gated access point on the eastern side of the site. And this would just be for emergency access. Again, that's similar to what they had approved originally. There were concerns brought up at the neighborhood meeting about the traffic along Franklin Road. When that development was approved, there was a turn lane required with that original approval. That is moving along with this as well. This is going to remain with the development. Buffering not required between residential subdivisions and conventionally zoned districts like an RM or an RL zone, but you can see in a PUD you do have to have a minimum of 10% open space, with half of that being usable as defined by our zoning ordinance. The master plan in their plan development does show the amount of open space, which appears to meet that requirement. Performance standards, again, since this is a residential development, nothing for the applicant to have to worry about there as far as performance standards go. We did send the applicant a list of comments on this pattern book. When I first sent these comments out, the responses were still forthcoming. We did receive those. Most of those responses have been addressed. One item I would like to go over just in a little bit more detail, and if we can bring up the pattern book, I'll show you what I'm talking about. This really has to do with the zoning of the property. Thank you. As Chairman Reed had discussed a little earlier, let me just find that slide real quick. Okay, this is going to be a little difficult to see here, and I apologize for that. Most of this application is going to be an amendment to the approved plan development. Now, since they're adding this second portion of the parcel right here, this is currently zoned RM, and this will have to be included, of course. That's part of the rezoning from RM to PUD to include that within the application that they're presenting today. Now you see this little area right in here. This is area that's actually currently zoned PUD that they're no longer going to incorporate, so this just needs to be taken out. So this would actually go back to RM. Now again, this isn't affecting the overall design or anything of what they're proposing, but I did want you to make you aware that this area here will be removed. This is just going to remain RM on that second tract. This shaded portion here will be added into the PUD, and then this is just all PUD amendment here. And this area back and through here was already RM, and it's going to remain that way. So the parameters and the boundaries, I should say, will change a little bit. It looks like that area, when you look at it, it's basically following the TVA easement right through here, and then following this little portion here where the Colonial gas line easement is. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that, and this little portion here would be added in to the plan development as well, this small portion here. So again, that doesn't affect the overall design or anything. And what comment, I just want to make sure everybody was clear as to exactly what they were asking for. So the applicant is present, and with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the staff? If not, we'll ask that the applicant, I think Jim Heisen, are you, ask that you come forward at this time? Or who you have to, we'll ask that you come forward up here to the well and ask that you introduce yourself. Just stand there, and you need the name and your address.
Okay, Michael Shamsey, the engineer for the development. I'm based out of Illinois. My address is 3440 38th Avenue, Moline, Illinois, with Landmark Engineering Group.
Okay, anything you want to say first before questions?
Sure. Like Doug explained, it's the 124-unit villa development over the previous plan that was 133 units, where all the units have two-car garages. They are private streets. We have sidewalks both sides, paved trails, meet the open space requirement, single-story units versus the previous plan that was 2 stories. Heavily landscaped buffer along Highway 96, and that's shown in our, we have a 2-minute short little video that shows a 3D image of the development, and that landscaped along Highway 96 is really shown in there. Other than that, the units range, I think, from 1,479 square feet to 1,520 square feet. And 2 mail kiosk, bike racks, access through a walkway between the basins. Our stormwater basins are retention basins with aerated fountains. Keep the basins, the oxygen level in the retention water. And that's pretty much it, I think. Summarizes everything.
Commissioners, do you have questions for the applicant? Any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner P?
Traffic on Franklin Road is excessive at times, to say the least. And it may be, I was looking for it in this plan, turning lanes on 96. And it looks like you have 4 cars in each parking lot, or each driveway, room
Yes.
for 4 cars?
There's 2-car garages plus room for 2 cars on the driveway. And I believe we have, I can't remember, it's 38 or 44 additional guest parking spaces throughout the development. And the traffic impact study was done previously, and turn lanes were part of the previous project, and we're maintaining that turn lane improvements on 96.
Hey, Doug, were all the questions answered in the neighborhood meeting?
Most, as I recall, most of them were. Now it's been a little bit since the meeting, but as I recall, of course, traffic was a concern. So they discussed the turn lane situation at the meeting. Of course, drainage is always a concern. Obviously they'd have to redo their drainage plan to make sure they're not going to be impacting the development directly across the street, Royal Glen. I know that the applicant, Mr. Heisen, I know he's been in contact with their folks in their HOA, actually did pass out a letter, and we didn't get this until later this afternoon, so I didn't get a chance to get this on your iPads, but there's a letter there from some of the, well, at least one of the residents there in Royal Glen that spoke in favor of the project. You have a copy of that in front of you. But, most of the concerns, I believe, were at least discussed, if not completely 100%, answered to someone's satisfaction, they were at least discussed. So.
The major issues that were discussed in the virtual meeting was, like Doug said, traffic, drainage, size of the units, height of the units, the value of the units, and the landscape border along Highway 96 was a sensitive issue.
Other questions?
I will call your attention in the pattern book, the original design that was approved a couple years ago was in there as well as the new design, so you can compare and contrast the two.
Let me ask you, on 96, are you looking at any turn lanes or any?
Yes, we're doing a right turn in and a left turn in too, both.
Okay.
I believe, I think I recall we have left turn into our development plus
You do.
Royal Glen.
Same area, okay.
Couldn't remember.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
I haven't had the opportunity to attend the previous meetings, so I apologize for that.
Excuse me, who is this?
This is Celia Snodgrass, and I'm a resident in Royal Glen.
Well, we're not in the public hearing yet.
Oh, okay.
This is only for the commissioners right now asking questions. We'll do that in just a minute.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of Mr. Sansey, please.
Okay, Commissioner Averwater.
As the design engineer, and I realize we're not into the site plan or the engineering phase yet, but as the engineer on this, are you aware that there is a drainage issue across Highway 96 that is just east of your entrance and the cross street with the Royal Glen Boulevard there? I want to make sure that that is high on your radar, that water comes heavily across there, and that you're going to be able to do something to help mitigate the volume of water and perhaps slow that down. It looks like you've got some units built there, and instead of a detention pond, and have you put any thought into that yet? Are you able to address that with us?
Yes, sir, I'm aware of the drainage issues, and we do have our design, I'd call it 99% complete. Our stormwater management plan is complete, and our discharge is approximately 70% of what we're allowed to based off of pre-development conditions from the 2-year event to the 100-year event. And we will be submitting all those documents, including the stormwater management plan with the site improvement plans after we go through the planning approval.
All right, thank you. Yeah, our just if you've never dealt with Rutherford County before, our engineer will be quite thorough on that. So I want to give you a heads up on that and pay special attention to that problem. I know it's a concern for the neighbors, and it is a traffic hazard there during heavy rains, and we want to do everything we can to help take care of that problem.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Allen. I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Allen?
Thank you. The detention basins, you're also showing in the pattern book that they have fountains located in them. So are they going to be ponds, or are they going to be basins, or are they going to be ponds with the capacity to accept drainage? Because they're kind of, looks like they're labeled as both.
The detention basins will accept stormwater runoff from the development, and there will be some volume water that is retained in the basins.
So they are going to function as a pond?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, sir. You can sit down. If we'll now move into the opening of our public hearing period. I'm asking that if you are zooming in, you're going to have to identify yourself so that I can recognize you. I'm sitting here looking at a screen that only shows me about 3 pictures, so if you're not a member of this commission, you're not on my screen. So I'm sort of like NASA right here now. If you're coming from somewhere else, I'm not seeing you. So if we're in the public, we'll now open it for public hearing. So whoever contacted a while ago that wants to make a comment on this, if you'll identify yourself, I'll recognize you, and then we'll let you make your statement. Are you there?
Yes, sorry, this is Celia Snodgrass.
Okay, Ms. Snodgrass.
And I was wondering when you said that there was a traffic impact study done. When was that done?
That study was done prior to the last development that was approved back in 2019, which recommended the turn lanes. Now, since they went down in the number of units and we're keeping the improvements that were identified, we didn't have them do another one. But like again, the turn lane improvements that they were going to do as part of the last project is still going to be done in this project. So we were satisfied with that.
Well, the reason why I was asking is if the traffic impact study was done during this pandemic, does it reflect really what the traffic would be in a non-pandemic time?
Well, when the last application was approved, it was back in 2019, which would have been a pre-pandemic, so that wouldn't have factored into to their recommendations. Traffic studies that we see since the pandemic, traffic engineers and those that put these together, they're aware that of the pandemic and the impact that they're having on traffic, as are we. So they factor that in. They look at historical trends and how much it's been increasing in time. They just don't say, oh wow, there's really not much traffic out there in 2020. I guess we don't have to do anything. We wouldn't allow that. But to answer your question, the last study was done prior to the pandemic.
Okay, well that's good to know. The total number of units that's been proposed is much larger than the 124, obviously. That's the villas that are being added over and above what's already been approved, right?
No, ma'am. The total number of units is 124. Originally, they were proposed to have 133, so the actual total number went down. This is not in addition to what was already approved. This is replacing that. Okay,
great. And the Burgess property next door, or close by, I guess it's next door, that's 1,100 plus units there?
Correct, about 1,150, roughly.
Okay. So is the plan really for Highway 96 essentially just to put in turning lanes? Is there any other plan over and above that to widen or to, accept because what's going to happen, at least what I see now, is coming from the Royal Glen development, at this point, there's certain times, peak traffic times, where when you try and exit out of the development, you can get out, but you are maybe you'll travel I don't know, 100 feet, and you're stuck during certain peak traffic times because of all the traffic backing up from Veterans Parkway at the stoplight there. So my concern is if you're going to add another 1,200, 1,300 units, which will be over time, but eventually that'll be that many. How is that going to accommodate? I mean, it's one thing to be able to get onto the road by means of turning lanes, but the traffic flow is not being addressed that I can see.
The county's thoroughfare plan actually does show Franklin Road being widened to 5 lanes. Now that is a state road, so a lot of that's going to be dependent on TDOT. They do have a plan to widen it all the way to Franklin. Now at this point they're on the Franklin, Williamson County side of Highway 96. They will be getting over to our sections sooner, hopefully, rather than later, although that's dependent upon the state and their funding and their priorities, of course. Now, I will say, and Mike may need to help me out here just a little bit, but with the Burgess property that you were referring to, there are some other additional traffic improvements that were approved along with the Burgess property rezoning, namely some improvements to the intersection of Veterans Parkway and Highway 96 that will hopefully help some of the traffic issues, lengthening of that left turn lane going onto Franklin Road, providing, if I remember right, a right turn lane.
Right turn lane on veterans heading south.
Heading south, and then some signal modification, I think.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Timing modifications and storage modifications in the turn lanes.
Yeah, so those are improvements that will be done as part of the Burgess property. So hopefully, again, maybe not widening the entire road right now, but those improvements should at least help with some of those issues that you were asking about.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to come forward? Either for or against? From the audience? If not, I'll close this part of the public hearing. And
Mr.
now,
Chairman, if I could, we had a little bit of discussion during my presentation regarding age-restricted versus age-targeted. I think that needs to be explained by the applicant a little bit. I've had a conversation with them a little earlier today. Apparently there is a difference, so I'd like for them to make that known. This is not going to be like an age-restricted community, apparently, like the Burgess farm or Burgess property was, 55 and up, but they can explain that a little better than I can.
okay. Would you like to come forward and explain that? Good evening. Just give us your name, too. Name and address.
Hello, my name is Allie Tuttle. I work for Pulte Homes as a land acquisition manager. Our address is 370 Mallory Station Road, Franklin, Tennessee. I'd love to address the question about age-restricted versus age-targeted. As you all know, the Burgess property was approved to be an age-restricted community. Essentially what that means is in our CC&Rs, we will restrict the community to only allow buyers of the age 55 and up. We have product that fits that buyer, and that really is the only difference between age-targeted and age-restricted. At Saddlewood, we are going to be doing age-targeted. We have product that is meant to appeal to the 55 and up retired buyer. 2-car garage, 1-story living with master down. Like I had mentioned previously, we just won't restrict it in the CC&Rs, so that gives us some flexibility to allow other buyers, maybe who aren't 55 quite yet, but are looking to be in this type of product and be near people that are like them and have similar hobbies and interests. But really, we are trying to capture this buyer. All marketing materials will be specific to this group of buyers and obviously our products. So that's really the only biggest difference. Any questions?
Any questions, commissioners?
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we've closed the public hearing, and we've now opened it back to the commissioners. Any further discussion, commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Doug DeMossi, please.
Okay, Commissioner Overwater.
Doug, I see that their parking space ratio is 2.3, or real close to that, parking spaces per unit. How are you feeling about the keeping cars off the street? Or, we've had a lot of this discussion lately with the zero lot line homes. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about this ratio and the ability to still maneuver emergency vehicles through there for when there is on-street parking?
Right. Well, and these will be private roads, so obviously we won't have as much say as far as how those roads are governed. What I did like about what they're proposing, of course, with the primarily, even though they're targeting, not necessarily restricted to the 55 and up crowd, they will probably and my guess, more than likely have enough parking spots as far as the garage, and then, being able to have 2 spots right there with a double garage, with double car garage. I did also like the fact that they had several smaller parking areas kind of scattered throughout for visitors and whatnot. But obviously, I would have felt a little less comfortable with it had they not provided the extra parking that they did. So I'm glad that they did put that in to accommodate some guest parking. So overall, I think I'm fairly comfortable with what they're proposing. With that size of a house, like I said, if that's the crowd that they're really trying to tailor it toward, the fact that you're just not going to see within that size of a house, probably not going to see as larger a family with as many cars.
Are the guest parking places close enough to the units are they distributed throughout the neighborhood so that people can actually use those parking places?
They're distributed throughout. We're looking at the plan right now over here. You can see some there. There's, I don't know if you can see, Mike's kind of highlighting some of them. There's some there. There you go. And the ones in the back on the other side of the easement, actually, some of those ones on I guess that'd be the west side, actually have longer driveways, which can accommodate more cars. So once you get a little further back there, I don't think it's as major. And I can't tell if there's any, no, there's not. So, but it doesn't look like there's as much of an issue back in that area. Turn here.
No street parking?
I'm not sure if that's going to be part of their CC. Are you all going to allow on-street parking as part of your development? I don't think that was really ever mentioned in their pattern book.
So they can street
well, as of right now, they're
what?
I'm waiting for an answer. I'm not seeing anything.
Going to say, do you have an answer to that?
There's no planned overnight parking on the street, but during the day there could be some parking in the street if you had visitors, but nobody overnight.
Not at the moment. Try it again.
You say they can, maybe in the daytime they can park on the street, right?
Yes, but no overnight parking, and I would assume the on-site management company would be enforcing the rules. Pardon? Yes, sir.
That answer your...
Mr. Shamsi, did you describe the road section in your booklet?
Yeah, I don't recall if we were 24 foot or 28. I don't remember. So I'd have to look back in the plans. But I believe it's a 24 foot, I believe. But Mike, I honestly can't remember. It is 28, they told me. I work on so many projects, I can't remember everything. I think we have 5-foot carriage walks on each side.
It says 24 foot.
Does it say 24?
It says 24.
Okay.
So, even though they are private streets, they'll have to be designed to county standards, and we will oversee construction of it. We just won't be maintaining it from here on out.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I
Mr.
want
P.
to mention the letter that Mike handed us. For those that are virtual, you may not have access to this letter from a resident in Royal Glen. and they show support for the development, but they have a concern about the non-rental. They're asking for owner-occupied only properties. That was their concern.
Right. Most of the planned developments that we see are going to be for sale type situations. Now, quite frankly, as staff, we have no way, after a sale is made, we have no way of tracking if that person ever rents it to somebody else. I mean, I understand their concern, but at the same time, we just don't have that ability to enforce something like that. You know, we just can't. There'd be no way to know if a sale was ever made, you know, short of looking at the records from the Register of Deeds office on a daily basis. That's the only way we could ever know that. And even if we did know, what would we do after we found out? So, but most of these are going to be owner, at least for sale units, not for rental units. Well, we recommended approval of this. I mean, really, it's, when you look at it, again, it's a decrease in the number of lots by about 9. The product itself is changing from single-family mix with multifamily, you know, what I would call townhome development, to just all townhome. But the impact really shouldn't be any more than what they were already proposing with these subdivision lots. So
These are just the changes.
correct.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have the second. Commissioner Overwater. Further discussion? Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Aberwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Move now into 6B. Murfreesboro Pool Contractors, LLC, number REZ 21004, locations on the Old Nashville Highway. Commissioner District 19, Rob Key. Site size is approximately 3 acres under consideration. Tax map 70, parcel 17. Existing zoning is commercial neighborhood. Proposed zoning is commercial general. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This property was rezoned by the Board of Commissioners back in June of 2019. The original request that came before the Planning Commission earlier that year in 2019 was for a portion of the property, as you see, to be zoned commercial neighborhood, with the remainder of it being zoned light industrial. At that time, the Planning Commission had their public hearing, recommended commercial general instead of the LI, and left the CN portion unchanged. That recommendation was ultimately approved by the Board of Commissioners. The Planning Commission also approved the site plan for the portion of the property that you'll be considering tonight back in March of 2020. It was for a, I think it was called Tennessee Bounce Houses or something like that, if I remember right. But the site was never developed, and that applicant has since abandoned the plans that they were proposed. The current applicant's proposing to rezone approximately 3 acres of the site, basically that portion that's zoned commercial neighborhood, to commercial general, to construct an office and warehouse storage area for a pool contractor. A concept plan was submitted with your application and is included with your agenda packets for your review. The proposed use would not be allowed in the CN zone, which is why they're coming before you tonight to rezone that portion of it. Commercial services, however, or commercial general would both allow that particular use. Access to the property would be from Old Nashville Highway. Any new or modified egress points would have to be approved by the Rutherford County Highway Department. Their concept plan does show parking and storage areas. We do require a hard dustless surface for parking and maneuvering areas, but areas that are going to be used for storage can have a gravel base. Of course, if this is approved, they will have to submit a site plan that will have to come before the Planning Commission, similar to the Tennessee Bounce House plan you saw last year. CG or even CS, any commercial zone property, is required to install a type 2 buffer adjacent to any residentially zoned property. You can count existing plantings, and of course a landscape plan would have to be submitted along with the site plan, and performance standards would apply in that situation as well. The property adjacent to this subject property that we're talking about tonight is already zoned heavy industrial. It contains an asphalt plant and some other industrial uses. The Planning Commission has an option if they wanted to go with commercial services as opposed to commercial general, they could do that. Both zones would allow for what the applicant's proposing. This request also does appear to be consistent with the recommendations of our comprehensive plan, and for that reason, we did recommend approval of this request. I know there's been some concern regarding some other potential development of this property to the, I guess that'd be the west of this subject site on the same property. Some issues that went to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a soccer field complex just within the last few weeks. But, you know, this doesn't involve that. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that there had been some other meetings on this particular property. So with that, again, we'll be happy to answer the questions, and the applicant is present to answer questions as well.
Commissioners, any questions for the staff? If not, we'll ask that the applicant come forward. I believe, Mr. Roundtree, are you going to take care of that one? Hey, Clyde.
Chairman Reed, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering. I'm representing the pool contractors, and just for a little clarification, the buyer is interested in rezoning the front portion of the property primarily to increase his flexibility. His vision for that property is to create basically mini warehouses where the front is an office and the back is a kind of a warehouse component to it. The example he's told us is right on North Thompson Lane, right next to, there's a kind of a heavy equipment dealership right across from a Dollar General. There's the same type of business he'd like to generate there. So he's trying to create the environment where he can maximize his opportunities for whoever could lease those particular mini warehouses. That is his intention. The reason it's kind of laid out the way it is, if that site plan's still up there, there's some soils. It's all septic out there, so we're having to really preserve the existing soils area. He doesn't need that much soil for the back portion for the pool company. He just has, it's 4 employees, and most of the work is done off-site. But for this development, we want to make sure that if each of these small warehouse office buildings had a bathroom, we could accommodate that. So there are some limitations in terms of how many units he can get in there. We don't have that calculated now because we haven't gone through that site planning process, but that's what his request was. It's just give him the flexibility. If he has companies that may not fit exactly into commercial neighborhood, they could still have an opportunity to office out of this location. So they will be the small office type warehouse business opportunities on the front portion. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Will he stores backhoes and equipment right there?
No, on his property, his primary use on his property is they're pool contractors and they subcontract, so they store a lot of, there's potentially a lot of storage of pool, like fiberglass pools on the property, and then he'll be mobilizing his pool installation company off the site, but that's all in the rear portion. And it's a good location for him. The land works for what his needs are. It's just more land than he really needs for the pool contractors, and he wanted to make sure that he wouldn't just be buying an extra 3 or 4 acres of land that he doesn't really need. He wants to make sure he can maximize the opportunity for future investment. That's really not a part of his initial planning. His primary purpose right now is to make sure that pool company can get in there, but he wants to make sure he has flexibility in the future if he decides development the front portion to go with this type of opportunity with the mini office warehouses. So they'll just be, typically those are more like air conditioning guy, you know, they're just small operation, 1 or 2 man type operations with a van. They have an alley load typically in the back, but they do want to have a little bit of office space on the front and a little bit of a commercial presence from the road that looks nice.
Any other questions from Mr. Roundtree?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll now open the public hearing for Murfreesboro Pool Contractors, REZ 21004. Public hearing is now open. And I think we have a possible Zoom for this one. Is there someone Zooming in? Maybe not. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and speak for or against? Have someone back there in the back. Come forward, please. Give us we need your name and your address. You might just want to make sure we get it.
My name's Philip Hearn. I live at 5001 Old Nashville Highway. Reynolds Mobile Home Park is directly across from this existing property. I come to that meeting in 2019 when they changed it from residential, wanting to go to industrial, but settled for commercial general and commercial neighborhood. I objected to that happening. I brought up the traffic situations there in my area. And really, I brought up this right here. There's 200 families probably in my community that aren't getting this. They're not aware of what we're talking about tonight. They're at home. They're relying on a little small placard that's laid off in the ditch. Said something about a meeting. I think maybe looking at the 500-foot area that receives these, real limited, maybe upwards of 15 families in this heavily community. I brought up the drainage issues. The drainage issues that's severe down at the Malone's residential home care. Every time it rains, 2 weeks ago we had a big news-making event come, it's going to be raining bad. Well, it rained. And sure enough, everything come from Reynolds neighborhood, down through the Horde farm, across the road on the Old Nashville Highway, down to the care center. When that happens, no one's going to use the restroom down there. Their tanks are flooded. Everything that's left usually goes over into Horde's farm. That was in 2019. Nothing's been done. Nothing's been brought up about the drainage. It's still happening today. At that meeting, drainage was brought up, like I said. I think Doug and somebody may have said something, well, there's drainage issues there, and how they're going to be handled is going to be tricky and costly. And it was left at that. The traffic wasn't brought up at all. Since that meeting, I've had 2 more companies besides the 6 commercial companies that's already within a quarter mile of me. 2 more companies have come in. The gravel yard, as well as Superior Landscaping, is getting ready to take off with a big operation. Vulcan is there. LoJack's is right beside me. And I've got IMI. Just because LoJack's has that real nice 4-lane big entrance out on the 4-lane, everything doesn't happen out that entrance. A lot of it comes out the back. Got wide loads. I've got machineries up and down this road being moved. Some of them on trailers, some of them aren't on trailers, but they're just getting moved. We deal with this kind of stuff on a weekly basis. Shouldn't have to do that in a residential area to the extent that it is. Some of you say we don't understand. Some of the public doesn't understand the use of industrial property. Live beside me and you will understand how LoJack, Vulcan, and IMI, all 3 work. Something else you might want to keep in mind, we have 4 large holes right there in our area that are, one's already getting filled up. Wonder what's putting in there. Our grandkids could have to drink some of that here in about 20 years. Keep that in mind. Each one of these businesses, these commercial businesses in my area, they require large dump trucks to be replenishing their operations, whether it's crush and run, whether it's tankers, whether it's equipment, machinery, whatever it is. A lot of this comes in on the Old Nashville Highway. From the Overall Creek area, the bridge right there at Overall Creek at one of the Horde farms. It's a death trap from right there all the way to the back of the quarry. We've got up and down hills. We've got brush. We've got trees hung over. Little or no ability to see what's coming at you. I come here today and I'm speaking for probably around 45 families in my business. It's a mobile home park. I look at it as affordable housing. 3 wrecks since this 2019 meeting in front of my park. 2 of them people trying to come in, 1 person trying to leave my park, and all 3 of them say, dang, I just didn't see him coming over that hill right there. And then it's happened, and you got families all tore apart and everything. Got 2 brand new neighborhoods within me, quarter-mile within me. They're building a big old bridge or something out there around 24. Everybody doesn't go to 24 that leaves out there. A lot of them come into the old Nashville Highway heading down to Laverne or somewhere. When the 4-lane gets busy out in front of LoJack, people start getting off and they come in the old Nashville Highway trying to get away from all that stall out there on the 4-lane. Some well-trafficked road out there. Little or no help in getting anything repaired. Something helped us, signs, anything. We were a problem for a long time down at Florence Road until somebody put a light up. Boy, that sure did help a lot. My commissioner was at this meeting that Doug brought up about the soccer fields. He brought up something that I want to hit on just for a second, was enforcement. 15 years ago, a fella come up here and asked to make this little old area right beside one of the 2 historical churches in our area. He wanted to make this little old small piece of property commercial. Well, he did. He made it and turned it into a storage unit, storage rental unit place, probably maybe 12, 14 units in it. It was real nice, real pretty. Dang, I think you even made him stick a flower or a bush out there. Real nice for about 3 or 4 years. Go out there and look at it now, right beside these churches. Your commercial buildup is happening and it's causing issues. Dr. Whedon out there is doing a good job for the neighborhood, as well as Perlinda down at the residential care center. After zoning approvals are made, I worry about the enforcement, how you follow up on them, how you check these people that are coming. Because in 4 or 5 years, they may see a good thing. Hey, I'm going to sell out. The next person doesn't have to come up here and talk to y'all about what their plans are. They can just feel free to do what they want to do. That's what's happened at the storage facility that you approved about 15 years ago. That's at 4122 Old Nashville Highway. We've got a lot of issues out there. We continue to take your commercial activities approvals. It's hurting us. We're not getting any kind of help. We have many school buses that come out of Smyrna, 3 at a time sometime. They're headed down to the cemetery because there's some kind of reenactment, some kind of a school function or something. Then I see chartered buses coming down there bringing tourists. I see this because I'm right on the Old Nashville Highway. I've been there since '72. I want you to think about your approvals today, what kind of an impact it has on us, and all the hundreds of families that are at home right now that have no clue of what in the world we're fixing to do for them. They have no clue. But just because we're the cemetery community, we don't want to keep on taking risky, dangerous approvals dropped on us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for a public hearing period? Right back here. We need your...
I live in Subdivision. My name is Wes Burbridge, 2831 Reynolds Drive. I live probably 4 houses down from Phillips Trailer Park, and I've been there almost 30 years.
Okay, sir.
I agree.
Speak out that way.
I agree with what he's saying, and we've had problems with the road where you're projecting to do this is 2 blind hills in either direction. And I've seen so many cars have the front end tore off Reynolds Subdivision entrance. We've griped with the people on the county road crews to widen the road there for the entrance because it's too far of a drop off. If you have a truck coming in or out, if they're towing a trailer or it's an SUV, you cannot physically let that vehicle in or out off the highway. If somebody is coming too fast from Murfreesboro towards Smyrna or Smyrna towards Murfreesboro, they tear the back end off the car and they total vehicles all the time. I mean, there's state troopers out there, there's head-on collisions, there's a problem with school buses, like Philip was saying. If I come down there, and I work for myself, so I'm on call 24 hours a day, and it doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential, I get a call, I got to go. Well, if I come out there during 3 o'clock and I've had to come back home and get something from the house I left for a job, I come out and there's a school bus coming in, I literally have to back my truck up. It's a regular pickup, 3 truck lengths that they can turn on our street. It is way too narrow. And if the bus tries to turn in and anybody's there, even like say a little Volkswagen, if they try to turn the radius of that bus, they're going to flip the bus over in the ditch. Literally coming in either way or leaving. It's that narrow. The other problem is the traffic problem, people speeding. They get in a hurry when traffic, like Philip was talking about, on the Murfreesboro Road side during rush hour. People will come flying over the hills either direction and bypass people on the double yellow line doing 50, 60 miles an hour like it's no big deal. And they do have good sheriff's departments checking for speed traps at night at the back side of the rock quarry where the gate's always open, where traffic's coming in and out of there all the time with tanker trucks and semis and dozers in there a lot. They had a proposal at one time, I heard, that AMI Concrete wanted to put a gate in at the end of that little residential neighborhood that's right beside LoJack, and so for some reason they stopped that. But there's a lot of problems with the traffic flow there. There needs to be a light put up there at that intersection, just a street light, because you come through there at night, you can't tell where the road curves and drops off because it's just pitch black out there. And that's just some of the problems. And then you got the problem also with that land across from you, the water runoff for that neighborhood. There's an overflow pond that's in front of Old Nashville Highway across from the Buddhist temple that's never been maintained. And I think it was either by the landowner or the county. I don't know where it went or who was supposed to do what, but every time it floods, there's 3 or 4 feet of water coming across the road, the width of probably 20 feet going from the Buddhist temple across the road, flooding when it rains real hard there. And you could hydroplane with no problem if somebody's coming over that blind hill and doesn't know it's there. You've also got water drainage problems with the backside of that property. There's 2 underground aquifer caves and sinkholes that you can look down in and see the water coming out of the ground running like a river. And it runs all the way through our neighborhood down to the rock quarry on the right side. For the flow of the river water, that's our underground aquifer drinking water for Rutherford County, if I'm right. And it's free flowing water. But that's all I got to say just off the top of my head. If you have any questions, I'm open.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Anyone else? Anyone to speak for or against? If not, I'm closing the public hearing on 6B.
Commissioner, this is Joel Patnode. I'm the person that's putting in the application. I'm on Zoom.
I'll let you come on. We called for you earlier. You wasn't there.
I apologize for that. Hey, I just wanted to speak to some of the residents. I guess some of their worries. I think one of their biggest worries is drainage. So they say, I want to tell you that Huddleston Steel has proposed a retention pond on the property for us to mitigate our drainage problems coming off our own lot. And then I also want to say that as far as the traffic's concerned, I think in the last traffic study, it's in the 2040 plan and also in the thoroughfare plan for the county. I believe it's proposing that that section going through there be changed to a 3-lane road. And the last traffic study, bear with me, I'm getting the information now. The last traffic study provided a level service of C for the traffic through there, which states that it's adequate for the supply. I don't believe that any of the traffic that we're going to be creating is going to add any kind of substantial traffic flow going through there, nor will be touching any form of Reynolds Road. But I'm open for any questions to my property or to the property that I'm looking to purchase in a way to help. I believe we're only proposing that 36 units be put in, or up to 36 units be put in on that property, with an average of two employees per unit. And that would only be during normal business hours, during daylight hours, around 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. So not at night either. I don't think that we're going to be substantially increasing the traffic flow down Old Nashville Highway. Also, this company is not IMI, or is it Vulcan or LoJack. This is a small business, not a large business. Once again, I'm open for any questions, and I'm here if you need anything.
Could we have your name? I was thinking you were coming in. We had someone that said they were coming in for the public hearing, but now you're the applicant, am I right?
I am the applicant, yes.
And
this is Joel. Last name is Patno with Murfreesboro Pool Constructors.
Give me that again.
I said this Joel, Joel. Last name is Patno, and it's Murfreesboro Pool Constructors.
Okay, sir.
For you, educated guess, how many trips per day do you think this is going to generate?
For the Murfreesboro Pool Constructors, we would probably be in and out of there maybe 6 to 10 times per day. But that is going to be on the back portion of the property that's already zoned commercial general. Obviously on the front side of the property, and this wouldn't be anytime soon, maybe 2 years out or so, the part that we're proposing that you rezone, we're obviously, we're depending on how many units we can get on that property depending upon soils. But with that said, we're looking at a max of 36 units, roughly about 1,200 square foot. And that would be, this would be a business similar to like an HVAC company. This would be office space in the front with small warehouse in the back, a flex property, if you would. Most of these businesses have 1 to 2 office people and maybe a crew coming in the morning and then leaving with their field work, with work being done in the field, and then coming back in the afternoons or evening time just to go home for the day. These are the kind of companies we're going to be catering to, and all of this is potential. Our main concern is that we're just able to use the back portion of the property for the pool company, which it's already zoned adequate to do so. It's only that maybe at some point in the future, if we see fit to put those flex spaces on the front, we could offset the cost of the land and the overhead of the back portion. Not saying it's going to happen, or not saying it's not going to happen, but we would like for it to happen. With that said, at the max 36 units, you're looking about 2 to 3 employees a day. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 72 in and outs. With that said, that would be at different times during the day. And like I said once before, I think in the thoroughfare plan as well as the 2040 plan, it's projected to do a 3-lane down through there. And then also we're looking at on that plan, if we do that, to have 2 entrances in and out if the property will allow.
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll move on now. Any other questions from the commissioners?
Well, he's talking about, I think, Murfreesboro City's 2040 plan. The map I was using to look at for the county's long-range plan didn't show any improvements on Old Nashville Highway. Now, the city's I know does. Now, Mike had pulled up something on his that showed some sort of improvement. We're not exactly sure what that is, but I know the map I was looking at didn't show anything. But the 2040 plan's Murfreesboro's plan for improvements. Now, I don't know if they've got anything, there's nothing imminent that I'm aware of for that particular section of road. Now, I will say that as staff, whenever we do see a site plan for this, I mean, be it for the portion where the pool construction business will be or for the other segment of the development he's referring to, we do have the ability to require a traffic study just to show what impact that could possibly have as far as traffic goes. So that is something that we do have at our disposal. Now, I know drainage, was the other big issue. I mean, it's been an issue since we started talking about this property. And I know that the last site plan we looked at on this property there was issues that we discussed at that time as well. So, I mean, that's just something that if this is approved, or even for the portion of the property in the back that doesn't need any approval tonight, I mean, that's something we're going to look at regardless, as far as they're going to do like a regional detention facility. Are they going to do something on each lot? How are they going to go about that? So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr. DeMasi, please.
Commissioner Averwater, you're recognized.
Thank you. Doug, in your notes, you said that perhaps a CS zoning, we should also consider a CS zoning. And I think I understand where you're going with this. I see 30-something, possibility of 30-something office buildings here and a lot of traffic. And I understand CG can open up the avenues for an awful lot of things there. I can't imagine what you could do that'd be more than 32 offices, but I suppose if you put some sort of convenience store in there, you'd have a whole lot more traffic. I guess my biggest concern, I know engineering will take care of the drainage, and I'm sure it will help the neighborhood in a small way. There's only so much you can do with one property, but over time, hopefully each individual property can help correct their own. But the traffic situation that he brought up, some hills in the area and that sort of thing, was this part of your reasoning for suggesting the possibility of a CS rather than a CG, or is there more to it?
No, the traffic didn't necessarily factor in because the use that he's talking about would probably be work in either zone as far as that goes. Now, when it comes to the actual traffic, what I go back to is we have the ability to require a traffic study on any development that we see. I'll let Mike talk to the specifics as far as the design of the road and all those things, but when it comes to actual uses of the property, from what they're describing, small contractors' offices would fall under construction sales and services, which is allowed in commercial services zone. So that didn't necessarily, it's not allowed in commercial neighborhood, which is why they're going this route. But so that so much didn't factor into it as much. Now, the big uses that you would really have to worry about more in commercial general than you would in commercial services would be like car lots, car dealerships, those kind of things. That's one of the big uses. It's not allowed in CS, it is allowed in CG, but I mean, again, a portion of the zone or the lot's already zoned that to begin with. But
So the CG has the potential for a whole lot more turns in and out of that development than a CS?
it just depends on the use. Like I said, there are more intensive uses allowed in CG than you would see in CS. So again, it didn't play into the traffic situation didn't play so much into why I recommended that. It was really more looking at the uses between the two.
But if we were to do CG on this property, somebody by right could come in and say, put in a convenience store or a, Dollar General or gosh, a paint store or
Right.
just about anything?
Well, anything that's classified as retail, they could do even in a commercial neighborhood right now. They would just be limited to 5,000 square feet. Anything more than 5,000 square feet in a commercial neighborhood, they would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Now, once you hit commercial services, when it comes to general retail, that 5,000 square foot limit is gone. So that's not going to have so much of an impact if you go commercial services versus commercial general. It's a step up, but it doesn't allow some of the same uses that commercial general allows. But as far as like you're talking about your Dollar Generals, convenience markets, those kind of things, they are allowed in commercial neighborhood now, just they're limited to 5,000 square feet for general retail type uses.
Are retail places like that allowed in a CS zoning?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
I think if it came in here for a Dollar General, Jim, if it came in here for a Dollar General or a Quick Mart or something like that, we probably wouldn't be for it, would we? Is that what you were hitting at, Jim?
Well, I'm thinking if this road, I know it's a heavily traveled road, and the planning department wasn't very thorough back in the 1800s. And I'm concerned about these hills, and it sounds like there's some limited site issues. And maybe the traffic study would address that. But if somebody came in with the intention to do a Dollar General, and I mean, I don't know how and it's already zoned for that, and you've got a lot of people coming and going of all different kinds of physical and mental abilities pulling in and out of there with limited sight distance, I'd be very concerned. I want to do something that's going to be low impact for the neighborhood until that strip can be brought up to more modern standards. So I guess that's where I'm going. I'm looking for, is the CN zone, the CS, or the CG going to be the least intensive and the safest for the neighborhood? I know either any project will address the drainage because, we've already got good codes on that, but everything else is just kind of subjective.
Well, and I'll say, commercial neighborhood, out of the 3 commercial zones we have, it's the most restrictive. Again, it doesn't allow as many uses as, say, your commercial services or your commercial general. Commercial neighborhood also allows for residential uses. You'll recall we did some amendments to the ordinance not too terribly long ago regarding some residential densities in commercial neighborhood zones. Commercial general and commercial services neither allow for residential uses. The limit to general retail, like we talked about just a moment ago, is in commercial neighborhoods, a 5,000 square foot, whereas that does not exist in the commercial services or commercial general. So from a use standpoint, you have more limited uses, and some of the uses themselves have, the general retail especially, have the 5,000 square foot limitation to them.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Bogle.
With that 5,000 square foot restriction, would that result in dividing up the parcel in such a way it would create more driveways entering that roadway? Or, I mean, not getting into the layout of property, but thinking along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, that is a possibility. Now, the applicant, when he was speaking a little bit ago, did make the point about a lot of it's going to depend on how much septic soil they have out there. They could have a large piece of property and only have one septic site. I mean, it doesn't matter what they're allowed to have on it. It's going to be limited. So, I think what he's talking about is kind of best case scenario as far as the number of units he wants, but of course that's all going to have to be worked out. But to answer your question, I mean, that could happen in commercial neighborhood, and commercial in general, it could happen in any of them. But that is a possibility if the soils would work out.
Well, and I was thinking along the lines of the restriction on square foot size, then you have to start breaking things up into smaller parcels.
Right, and that's, yeah, of course, now if they would do that, they'd still have to have adequate parking, and they still have to have
then you come back to the soil
drainage and
condition
everything.
to
Exactly.
service
So
each
there's,
lot.
yeah, you know, is that possibility? Yes. Realistically, is that going to really help the situation? You know, that's doubtful.
Thank you.
Mr. P.
Doug, was the applicant open to the idea of a CS instead of a CG zoning, since it would cover what he is saying he wants to do there? And that might make the neighbors feel a little more comfortable that there are a few more restrictions if what he wants to do is covered with CS. Is he open for that?
True. Just to be upfront, Commissioner, we haven't had that discussion. That was just something that I had mentioned in my staff comments, and we haven't had actual discussion on. So, I mean, I know he's present, so, I mean, if he would like to answer that question, I'm sure he could.
I'll be more than happy to answer that question. So, just to echo Mr. DeMasi, I think under the current zoning commercial neighborhood, there are many possibilities. I know it's limited to 5,000 square foot per unit, but there's very many possibilities that could actually create more traffic than less. I think in there, under the commercial neighborhood, you could do townhomes in there, you could do retail in there, you could do restaurants in there. I'm actually asking to change it to commercial general so I can appeal to those HVAC companies or say a soils group or something of that nature. It's going to be really similar to where the flex space or flex property is in the city over off of North Thompson Lane, just past Heavy Machines across from Dollar General. By changing it to commercial general, what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to take each unit, create it into a zero lot line and sell it and have it governed by a HOA. And I'll still be able to head up that HOA by keeping majority ownership of say 12 units myself. And then with that HOA be able to limit what types of companies come in or go out. With that said, I don't think whether you go commercial general, commercial services, or commercial neighborhood, I don't think you're really limiting the traffic flow. Depending on what type of business you put in there, that's what's going to limit the traffic flow. But at the same time, there's in each classification, there's plenty of businesses that are available that all have heavy traffic flow. With that said, my targeted businesses aren't going to be the ones with heavy traffic flow, and the reason for that is because of the soils. The soils are in commercial businesses, soils are dictated by how many people visit that or how many people are staffed per day. And that's how you do your calculations per how many soils or how much leach field you need. With that said, it behooves me or benefits me to have businesses there that have the least amount of employees or the least amount of foot traffic than the most, because I'm able to get more units in there that way. With that said, the soils and the capacity on this property the property does not have the capacity to do these big types of businesses that you're speaking of. The types of businesses that are going to provide heavy foot traffic or heavy traffic flow would also provide a lot of people in and out of that business, which would also make the soils not compatible. So by changing it to commercial general, you actually give me more options to get the types of businesses that are smaller or the types of businesses that have less traffic flow or less people then, and by limiting me to commercial neighborhood, you're saying, okay, well, we want you to put a hair salon in there instead of a HVAC company. Like I said, it's not that I'm not open to the commercial services. Obviously, I would be if it was either that or commercial neighborhood. But I don't think that that's gonna. I don't think that that's gonna address the traffic concerns of the neighbors. I think that whether you go commercial neighborhood, commercial general, or commercial services, their concerns, I don't believe, are going to be applicable to what I'm doing or what I can and can't do with something that's already zoned right now. The changes I'm asking the commission to make, it doesn't change the concerns of the neighbors. The concerns are still going to be there of the neighbors. They're going to be there whether it's commercial neighborhood or commercial general. The only thing the only solution that would be viable to the neighbors and to address their concerns would be just to simply not let anybody build on any of these commercial spaces at all. And as the man that owned the trailer park pointed out, and I'd like to echo, commercial is going that way. And that's why we see not just a heavy industrial across the street, but we also see the landscaping company, the gravel company, and so on and so forth. That's why the soccer complex has put in petitions in other companies as well. That's the direction that it's going, and I'm only asking that you allow us to build on this property instead of just leaving it vacant. The change in the zone won't change whether or not there's traffic on the road. And like I said, I'm here, I'm open, and I'm open to answer any questions if you have.
Mr. Chairman, if I could address a couple of the things that he talked about.
Okay.
The first thing has to do with what he was talking about as far as the zero lot line is concerned. And maybe he's not thinking about this in the context that he said it, but zero lot line would not be an option in the commercial general zone. Okay, now there may be an opportunity for like horizontal property regime or something like that, which is more of like a condo, where the applicant owns the actual floor of where they are, but you know there's common area, everything else, because there's setback requirements, and there's no allocation made for zero lot line type developments. Also, a lot of the uses that he's talking about as far as what I would call general personal services like beauty salons and all these other things that he was talking about, those are going to be allowed in commercial neighborhood services or general. That really makes no difference as far as, you know, if you do rezone the property to either commercial services or commercial general, you're not eliminating those uses. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that you know, while there's still going to be traffic concerns and while there's still going to be drainage concerns, those uses are still going to be allowed regardless if this is zoned or not. So I just want to make sure that everybody was aware of that.
Okay, commissioners? I think we have heard from the applicant that he doesn't want the zoning changed from what he has requested, so let's
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to support a commercial services. I feel like the commercial general is a wide open opportunity for just about any project. So I'll make a motion that we rezone that to CS rather than CG.
Okay, we have a motion to make the zoning to commercial services rather than commercial general. Have a second from Craig Lynch. Further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, excuse me. If I understand you right, Mr. DeMasi, changing or not changing the zoning from what it is now is really not going to affect the traffic at all.
As far as the use he's proposing,
right,
no, it's not going to. No,
okay,
sir.
so if it stays as CN,
If it stays at CN, I
it
mean, now
could
he
be
could still
worse traffic.
Yeah, he could still build his business in the back that he's talking about
Right.
doing. So that's not going to affect anything one way or the other.
But that wouldn't affect the drainage, won't affect the traffic or not.
We would
so-
still have the ability, I mean, they're still going to submit a site plan regardless, and we're still
Right.
going to have the ability to require a traffic study if we think it's warranted, as well as any drainage studies that we feel are warranted as well. That's not, none of that changes regardless of what you do.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. If there's no further discussion, call the roll.
Charlotte P. Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Aberwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle.
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Pattis Reed.
Yes.
Carries.
Okay, we will move on now to 6C. We are dealing with the applicant is Phil Dodd for Park Trust, REZ 21005. Location is Richland Richardson Road, Commissioner District, Robert P. Size of site is approximately 81 acres. Tax map 104, parcels 1701 and 1702. Existing zoning, residential low density. Proposed zoning is planned unit development for a residential subdivision. Mr. Tomasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant proposes to construct 171 single-family detached units on the subject property. The property could accommodate a maximum of 243 single-family units under the current RL zoning because water lines can support hydrants and the development will be served by a step system. You'll recall in our zoning ordinance we do have those provisions available when they meet those criteria in the RL zone. Again, this is a gross density calculation. Would not consider any kind of easements, rights of way, anything like that. Once you start putting in those in wetland areas, step soils, et cetera, more realistic density would probably be somewhere closer to 150, but that just gives you an idea of kind of a comparison there. The staff report you have before you, again, was written before we had our revisions back from the applicant. So the minimum lot size that they're proposing is a little bit more than 6,000. That's actually 6,500 square feet. Typical lot still around 6,750. Minimum lot width is 56 feet at the right-of-way line. The minimum house size is proposed to be 1,400 square feet, with each home having a minimum of 3 bedrooms and a 2-car front entry garage. All elevations are shown to be of vinyl construction. There will be an HOA to maintain all common areas. Again, I will call your attention to the pattern book, which is on your iPads for your reference. We have passed along concerns to the applicant regarding the issues we've seen with approval of smaller lot developments. You'll know we had a work session about that back in January about these smaller lot subdivisions. I do want to pull up their pattern book here and just discuss briefly what some of the what they're proposing. It's toward the back. Yeah, I'll take it. Thanks. Just bear with me here as I zip over to that particular page. As you recall, one of the issues that we discussed in regard to the smaller lot subdivision was the fact that the rear yard, especially when you start factoring in detention ditches and everything, pretty much makes those rear yards unusable. So what you are seeing here on this page right here, and this is a page 15 in your pattern book that's on your iPads. You have this on yours as well, so you can look at this. They have 2 different types of lot depths. They have those that are a minimum of 120 feet, and they've got those that have a minimum of 150 feet. On both of these lots, you see they still have the 35-foot front setback, and they have the 2-car garage and the ability to fit 4 cars into the driveway on each of these. What they have done in the backyard, which I think does help the situation, on these 120-foot lot minimums, for depth. They are proposing, instead of what we normally see as a 20-foot setback, they're actually proposing a 35-foot rear setback. So their building envelope is actually going to end here, which gives them more usable yard. Also on the 150-foot lot, depth lots, what they're showing is a 45-foot rear setback as opposed to a 20. So you've got your 20-foot easement on a majority of these lots, but then you'll see that there is more usable backyard than what we've seen in the past on some of these. Now, they actually do have these broken out, and let me just zip back up here just to kind of show you on page, right before this one, here we go. You can see that the yellow on this map here, these are the 120-foot minimums, and these orangish ones are the 150-foot minimums. So they actually have them spelled out here as to which is which. So I appreciate the applicant kind of going into the design of this and looking at how to provide some more usable backyards based on the concerns that we've had on those particular developments. They did have a neighborhood meeting on this, which was again held virtually due to the pandemic back on February 1st of this year. There was issues ranged from traffic concerns, drainage and wetlands, the status of access to an existing cemetery on adjacent property, and timing of the development. All streets will be public rights-of-way, except for in the very back here, you can see they've got two stub outs to adjacent property, and they have a little connection here between the two. That is proposed to be a little private connection between the two, so just so you are all aware of that. There is also something that we, Mike and I are both happy about and we asked them about, are providing a connection to the Thompson Downs subdivision, which is right to the north. This is under construction right now as far as in the infrastructure is concerned, and this connection will be made as part of phase 1 in both developments, both Thompson Downs and in this development as well. The phasing plan is actually the next page of the pattern book right after this. You can see that right here. That this is all part of phase 1. So this connection will be made. So even though there's only one way in and out here, there will be, between the two, there will be a connection here and a connection here, given multiple ways in and out for both of these developments. A traffic study has been submitted with their application. Part of the improvements proposed by the developers to add turn lanes onto Richland-Richardson Road into the development, and they will also reconstruct the road in front of the site to smooth out the curve. And yeah, Mike, you can have this back, sorry. Mike will highlight that. You can see right in that area where there's a pretty substantial curve right there, they're actually going to flatten that out to make that a better situation in that particular area right in there. And I did include those recommendations in your report. Residential PUDs are generally not required to provide buffering adjacent to residentially zoned properties, but they are required to provide a minimum of 10% open space, with half of that being usable. The open space that they're proposing here does appear to meet those requirements. Performance standards would not apply since this is a residential development. With that, I'll be happy to answer questions if you have them. The applicant is present, and again, we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I believe we have the applicant present, and we ask that you come forward.
Thank you, Chairman. Matt Taylor from SEC, located at 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard here in Murfreesboro, and I am the design engineer for the applicant. Happy to answer any questions. Doug did a good job going over all the important parts of the project. Did want to point out a few things. You know, we're excited about the project. We think that we like the layout. Most of the homes back up to permanent open space, which I think is always a nice addition and amenity that they don't really have to pay for. Some of that open space is going to be common space, while other is step filled. Also tried to address the backyard concerns that we've been hearing lately, as Mr. DeMasi said, so we hope that that appeases you. And then we've got sidewalks along both sides of all of our streets here. We've done that in a couple of our other neighborhoods and been very successful, and it's been very well received by buyers, so we'd like to continue that here as well. Are providing the two-car garages and then 4 cars outside of every garage. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Private.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. That's the way I would envision that. We really hadn't talked about the mechanism of how that goes away. I would assume that would fall on whoever extends those over. And maybe we need to put a little thought into that, but that allows everybody to still make a turn around there, since those are long dead ends.
So is a possibility to
We've got one in the front that connects to Thompson Downs, and so they should be built by the time we are built, and then we've got these two in the back. Everything else to the northwest, that is state property. I think that is in a conservancy for some, I think it's endangered plants or something over there. And then we've got the stream that borders us on the south, and so we try to not impact the stream or any wetlands and plan those stubs in some realistic locations.
Anyone else?
Yes, on Richardson Road, it looks like from view number 13 on our map here, there's a couple of units that are going to be real close to the road. If, let's say, 50 years down the road, they want to widen that road, is there room, or will that house have to be purchased and condemned to widen the road?
No, sir. We've got one lot that I would say is close, but we've still got a decent amount of common space that'll be landscaped and entry monuments between there. And I think that with the way that we're going to widen that road, we're going to widen it all toward us. And so with our project, if somebody wanted to come in there and the county wanted to widen that road in the future, they could do that the other direction as well. I'm sure that we'll be dedicating enough right-of-way. I think this road is intended to be widened to 3 lanes in the future, if I remember right. And so I know with our preliminary plan, we'll dedicate enough right-of-way to plan for that.
Anyone else?
The standard question of will there be parking on the road? Are the roads wide enough that the buses and the ambulance can get through if people are parking on the road?
So what we have done is we meet all the county standards with the road. These templates are pulled straight out of the county subregs, and then we're still providing 2-car garages and then 4 cars in every driveway. So it's six cars per lot, I would say. And so if there's more than that, that's a huge family. So they need to buy 2 houses, and we'll be happy to sell them to. Yes, sir. I've got 3 generations living at my house, and I could still park in that, I think. So,
any others? If not, thank you, Mac.
Thank y'all.
Okay, we'll now open up the public hearing for comments. Anyone like to come forward? Yes, sir. Come up and state your name and your address.
Can you put that nice shiny slide back up? The one that's got the red lines on it. Commissioners, my name's Joe Guerin. I live at 801 Richardson Road, and I'm in that area. I'm in that area right there. That's you can see the squiggly line goes all the way around. That's my house and my property right there. And I have 2 concerns that I'd like to have addressed, and I don't know if I should talk to Matt or Phil about it, but one concern is between on the I guess that side right there where your pointer was. I'd like some sort of privacy put in there, because if you see my house and the barn, it's awful close to that area. And I thought about some of them little skinny trees that build up. I first said a fence, but fence is not as pretty as those trees, and maybe they intend to put trees back there anyhow. And also up there at the road, you see that's real close to the to my property, and I got a great big barn there, and I can't see that way. So I just like to have that privacy, turn that corner, and so everybody coming down the road wouldn't see me out there working or whatever I was doing. And then the other thing that happened the other day at the other property y'all were talking about, Thompson Downs, is that the name of it? They were blasting over there. I need guidance on what to do if you guys blast and it messes up my floor in my barn or does something to the foundation of the house. So I'm just asking, I don't know what to do. I guess that's your question, but
Yeah. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, when it comes to a blasting, that's all handled through the state fire marshal's office.
Pull that off. I can't hear you. I can't understand.
I'm sorry. Yeah, well, the state fire marshal's office handles blasting, any regulations and concerns. So if you're getting vibration, now as part of, if they're going to be doing any blasting, they're going to have to do like pre-blast surveys. There's regulations behind that and everything. But that's all handled through the state fire marshal's office. But we can get you in touch with somebody.
I don't need to go out and, there's nothing I have to do ahead of time to show you that there was damage then.
I think they do pre-blast surveys, is my understanding, is what they do. And then if it happens as a result of that, then they can, then they'll have evidence of it. That's my understanding.
I support the project. I always support progress. So, but I just had those couple of concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Anyone else? Nobody by Zoom? Nobody has contacted us. If there's no one else, we will close this public hearing period and move on into the commissioners' discussion and questions. Commissioners?
Matt, what about the trees?
Sorry. We're perfectly fine with that. We'd actually met with Mr. Guerin maybe about a month ago. It was shortly after our neighborhood meeting, I think, and talked about that. And so we're happy to do trees or a fence. In our mind, we were thinking a fence, but if he wants trees, we're happy either way. So we'll provide screening to whatever Mr. Guerin wants through there.
Charlotte?
I actually got a phone call on this at my home from the county commissioner in this area. And he stressed that turn lanes and widening the road, and that was his major concern for this.
Yes, ma'am. And all of that is inside of our commitment inside the PUD book. And so I think Doug mentioned he included the recommendations from the traffic study inside the book. The volumes on Richland Richardson are so low that it does not warrant it, but we know that's a very sensitive issue for this body, the commission, the county, the residents, and so we went ahead and just committed to doing that up front, day one. That'll be with our first phase, so that'll be taken care of.
I think if you'll look right over here to the right, it says proposed roadway realignment and turn lanes. Okay, I understand.
And I do want to thank you for going down that checklist of things we've been discussing on improving those lots, those deeper backyards and the sidewalks and things that you all hear us on. And we appreciate you accommodating those, because those are things I would look for in purchasing as well. The only thing I still can't figure out yet is how to allow somebody to plant a tree in their front yard, but we're making progress. So thank you
We
for
could
that.
probably find a way to shoehorn it in. So
come up with a short root genetic tree that doesn't affect, no.
We've got 7.5 feet on the other side of the driveway. We can put her there.
They got these Japanese maples. They they might fit, but they're very expensive. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, man. All right, commissioners. Motion approved.
Second.
Second, Commissioner David Jones. Any further discussion? Not, call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch. Yes. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle.
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen? Rhonda Allen? Pettis Reed?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Gail, I said yes. I'm sorry. I guess you couldn't hear me.
We could not, but thank you.
Thanks.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. All rezoning requests will be considered on April the 15th at the Board of Commissioners meeting unless deferred or withdrawn by the Planning Commission or the applicant. So we'll let everyone know that. Next item is old business. Any old business?
No, sir, I have no old business, nor do I have any staff reports.
No staff reports or other business. If not, this meeting is adjourned.